Welcome to Coin World Television. I'm your host, Rick Amos, and today we have a special guest, and I have the privilege of sitting down with somebody that I've known for a while and just absolutely love. But he's one of the most consequential figures, I think, in the history of American numismatics. And of course, that is none other than John Albanese. John began his career as a rare coin dealer in 1979, founding Coronet Rare Coin Galleries at a time, frankly, when the hobby operated almost entirely on personal reputation, handshake transactions. He would go on to help change all that. In 1986, John was among a small group that co-founded Professional Coin Grading Service, also known as PCGS, the first major third-party coin certification service, an idea that transformed how coins are bought, sold, and trusted around the world. He then founded NGC, or Numismatic Guarantee Company, bringing a second independent grading standard to the marketplace. Recognizing that numerical grading alone could not capture the full quality of a coin, John founded Certified Acceptance Corporation, also known as CAC, in 2007, introducing the now famous green sticker as a market standard for coins that meet a higher bar within their assigned grade. CAC has since elevated coins with a combined market value exceeding $2 billion. Wow. Most recently, John founded CAC Grading, built on a co-founder model of over 125 professional numismatists and influential collectors with a mission to bring full transparency to grading standards. Across 4 decades, John has personally graded more than 1 million coins, has been named Numismatist of the Century by Coinage magazine, and his work has shaped nearly every corner of the modern rare coin market. Today, as Coin World marks America's 250th anniversary, we're honored to have him with us to reflect on the history of coin grading, what it has given the hobby, what it has cost, and where it goes from here. John, welcome to Coin World Television.
Thank you.
We're excited. We're excited to have you here. We have a bunch of questions. They're all good ones. So let's get started if you don't mind.
I'm ready.
All right. So you entered the coin business in the late 70s before third-party grading existed. How did dealers and collectors actually establish value and trust in transactions back then, and how often did it go wrong?
Well, I was fortunate because I had extensive coin shop experience as a teenager, and I was introduced to Ed Hipps and his son, Ed Hipps Jr., back in the mid '70s, and I got to tell you, I mean, extremely underrated firm. I mean, these are Hall of Fame coin graders, and at the time I remember going to larger coin shows, and from soup to nuts, I mean, I thought coin for coin Ed Hipps had the best inventory on the floor. He loved coins. I mean, you could buy choice AU or choice BU chain cents. You could have bought I've seen complete sets of Mercury dimes, Buffalo nickels, nice Morgans, early type, everything. He had soup to nuts. He had an amazing inventory. It was sort of his passion. It was clear he wasn't doing it just for the money. It was his passion. So I got exposed to a lot of great coins, and my stepfather was also a pilot for Eastern Airlines, so I was able to fly to coin shows for whatever it was at the time, $9 or $12 or something. So I was very fortunate to get national exposure very early and go to coin shows. He would give me his want list, and I'd run around shows looking for coins. I think I just really had a great head start. And there's a handful of other dealers my age that have the same experience. So when I entered the coin business full time, it was actually late '78. I was 19. I wasted a year in college, and I really, at the time, I was really upset at myself for wasting that year. At the time, when I was 19, the coin business, I guess I was young, but I wasn't that young. I mean, there were guys, there were, if I was 19 and you were 24, you were old, right? Someone like John Danville, he was 24, he was old. So that's how we looked at things. And, I was just very lucky very early on and really just sort of dealt in the nicer, higher echelon coins. So to me at the time, not having coins graded in holders was an advantage for me because I had a knack for it. And quite frankly, I had the best time of my life from probably from back from the mid '70s to as a coin collector and working at a coin shop to pre PCGS. I had much more fun in the coin business then than I did once they started getting graded, because it was sort of the Wild West. So you could literally go to a show, and if a seated quarter bid for an MS65 bid for $400, and you found one that was today at 68, it might be $500, right? So it was kind of fun, but basically, I mean, at every show, I was able to buy one or two coins that would pay my expenses for the whole show, because we didn't do as much business, but we had higher margins. It was much more challenging. It was a lot more fun. So for me, it kind of ruined the fun, right? So let's put it that way. However, I think for the average buyer, not really knowing, not having the expertise on grading, it became much easier to buy once the coins were certified. So it really depends. I mean, the insiders and the experts will always, they'll buy a coin today, and you'll look at auction results, and you'll say, gee, this 1897 half brought double what they expected. You think, what crazy guy bought that? In many cases, it's the smartest guy in the room, not someone else. And it's usually the 1897 half dollar that brings a record low price. That's usually not the smartest guy. It's usually the dumbest guy in the room, because he thinks he's getting a bargain. So, as we know, like, my philosophy has always been in coins: buy high and sell higher, buy the finest, overpay, and sell them for more. But that was always my
Yeah.
feeling. And I actually forgot the question, but
No, no, you're okay. You're talking about it because it was an interesting time, pre-slab, right? Because it was a handshake business. Personal reputation mattered, right? And I'm sure in many cases it went great. I'm sure in some cases there were some abuses, just because of the nature of it, right? So I don't know if that was very common or not.
well, there could have been some abuse. But I got to tell you something. I'm going to tell you today, and I mentioned this to Beth Deisher years ago. There are more abuses now than ever, and it's not because of the third world. It's not because of the grading companies, but there are what we call third world grading companies. There are companies today, and I spoke to eBay officials last week. I don't know how this happened, but some of these third world grading companies have snuck onto eBay through the back door. They used to have limited them to several services. Now there's a host of them, and I mean, there's three or four grading services out there that exist for the primary reason of overgrading coins, or coins that are whizzed, or even coins that are counterfeit. They're in holders. So there's as much abuse today as there was then. Okay, so just because the coins, back then the coins were not certified. Now they are certified, but that's giving people a false sense of hope, because it's not done by a legitimate company. So, unfortunately, the fraud is still with us. It's not a regulated business. Sometimes I wish it were, but I think if anyone does that, because of the internet, now you have AI. I mean, if anyone does a half an hour of homework, they can sort through a lot of that, and they could save years of making mistakes by just doing a little research, right? But so
Makes
that's
sense.
so that's key. You still have to do due diligence.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you learn to grade? I mean, was it an apprenticeship, or was there any educational process, or was it just knowledge and dealer to dealer wisdom that was passed
The
amongst?
best the best way to learn how to grade is to when money meant something. So when you're 15 years old and you buy a barber quarter for $100, and you bring it to a coin show, and you can only sell for $80, and you're losing $20. When you're a kid, that's a lot of money, especially back in the '70s. That'd be like losing over $100 today. I've learned by losing money. I've learned by my mistakes. Fortunately, in 1979, 1980, again, like when I started in late '78, coins were starting to heat up a little bit. But as you know, in '79 we had bullion and gold and silver going higher. Uh, Jimmy Carter was in office. The dollar was a disaster. Going into 1980, there were many coins I was handling in January of '79 that between then and March of 80, April of 80, had gone up tenfold, right? Some even like Proof 3-cent nickels went up 15-fold. They went up from $150 to $3,000 and at less than a year and a half. And so back then, if you made mistakes, the market would bail you out, right? Because I mean, coins were going up 10% every week. It seemed like every coin show, coins cost 10% more. It was insane. And we were doing 40, 50 shows a year then. So, and then things sort of, and then we had this deeper, we had the crash, a Central State show in April of 80. And then we had a rough 2 years there until the Volcker lowered interest rates at the ANA in August of 82. Then things started getting better, but it was a rough time. And the adage at the ANA show was like coins that were investment, what I considered nice coins, that gem seeded quarter, they were about 15 cents on the dollar. Some coins were 10 cents a dollar. That was sort of like the rule, 15 cents on the dollar of what the high was. So that that 1885 quarter went from, I mean, it might have gone from in superb gem $800-900 to $22,000
Wow.
down to 3,000
Wow.
today. So again, I mean, but that was the mania. That was Jimmy Carter office. Silver went from $5 to $50.
Yeah.
Inflation was in the high teens, right? Things were crazy.
Yeah. Well, and so the education of pre-slab coins was just trial and error and
Sure.
talking to your peers and what do you think this is? I think this is very fine or whatever it may be back in those days, right? Interesting. So the Sheldon 70-point scale was designed in 49 for large cents and as a young dealer, as a young collector, did it seem adequate for the entire series, or were some of the limitations known early on, but it just became the standard by which we were going to number coins?
Yeah, I mean, I never questioned it. I would always go by the term, and again, whether it was talking to Ed Hips or Gene Edwards, like if it was MS65, it was a gem. And I still today, before I look at a coin, before I'm in Virginia Beach, before I'm grading it or here stickering it, to myself, is it a gem? A gem must be, it must be, again, not a perfect coin, but it should be attractive. If it's not attractive, then it better be technically way above the others, right? So it's really a matter of there's 3 or 4 items that factor into coin grading, but to me, a gem is a gem. We talked about silver dollars the other day. For some reason, I've seen lately, I must have seen 10 or 15 coins here for stickering, which none of them stickered, but an 1891 silver dollar, like that was a coin when I was a kid. People like Bobby Emmer or Ed Hips would challenge me, hey, find me a $91 a gem, fully struck gem. And I would run around the floor at an entire Central States, entire coin show, not even find one coin, right? And back then, they might have been $300-400. Maybe I was willing to pay double bid. Today, a CAC coin $6,000. But I got to tell you, like lately, there must have been a horde of them come out, but a lot of really nice high-end coins have come out, but they're weakly struck and they're not stickering because they're not gems because they're not well struck. So as far as the grading scale goes, when I was a kid, for my whole life, if you had a silver dollar, especially and for the most part for omens, if it wasn't well struck, not fully struck, it wasn't a gem. So it wasn't a 65. I just correlate gem to 65. I correlate 63 to choice, and superb is 67. As far as all the other grades are concerned, I have issues with the Sheldon scale because I believe that we've stretched it. Again, when I worked in a coin shop, there was a guy named Sammy came in. He had a Coca-Cola route for bottling, for different stores. Sammy then became a coin dealer and bought an $1804. But Sammy was a very sharp guy. Not the best grader, but back in those days, everyone understood grading. You had a silver dollar. It was either 60, it was a 65, it was in between, a 67. There weren't that many grades. So basically, the electrician, the plumber who came in, the Coca-Cola guy came in. Basically, you would go to a coin show and half the people there knew how to grade. because there weren't that many choices. So now we go 60, 61, 62, and now we add pluses to it. And I've been interviewed, complain about this in Maurice Rosen's newsletter. I said there's too many grades. We're splitting hairs. Now we're at the point where again, like when I was a kid, tens of thousands of people can grade coins and accurately and feel confident. And now there's a few dozen. So that scares me a little bit. It's become too refined, too exact. And I got to tell you, and myself included, it's impossible to be as consistent as we want to be because there's too many grades. And then you add the plus to it, it makes it tougher. And I've tried everything, grading in the morning, grading at night, before meals, after meals, blood sugar, workouts, things you're not. I mean, I could see a coin today and I could reluctantly say, okay, this will sticker, and then it'll come in tomorrow morning for quality control, and I'll look at it and I'll just say, how could I have sticker? How could I have done that? So
How did I do that?
it happens. Like we're not perfect, but we could be much more perfect if we had fewer grades.
Yeah, I agree.
So it kind of relates to a story I read about this. I wish I could find the article, but it was in Forbes magazine back in the 1980s, and they talked about bubbles. They talked about the tulip mania, right? And they mentioned in Holland back in the 1700s, there were tens of thousands of participants buying and selling tulips and having fun. But they said at the time, like a great tulip, you could buy a horse with it, right?
Yeah.
And the market was vibrant. It was reminds me of the coin market in the 70s and 80s. And then a few years later, the best tulips, rather than buying a horse with it, you could buy a house with it. But the problem is they say only about two people in Holland could tell the difference. So everyone else is left there saying, oh well, I guess they're the experts, right? So, but to me, you have a bunch of people that are disenfranchised because they can't tell. We get people that send us coins and they don't sticker, and they just don't understand it. Well, how can this not sticker? They don't understand. The coins look good to them, just like the poor guy in Holland who thought the tulip looked good to them. But the experts that have a really refined sense, they're the ones who make the call. I like I said, I think in a nutshell, there's I think it's a bit overdone with the Sheldon scale, 1 to 7. I just think there's too many grades.
Yeah. So let me add on to that because for I don't see it as much anymore, but there was a movement to try and go to a 10-point scale. They're doing it in sports cards and other places. A 9.8 or a 9.7 or 9.6. I think that has come and gone, but you would know better than I am. But did that even make it harder than the Sheldon scale? Do you think? Which is why maybe that wasn't adopted because it's working in other hobbies, right?
I'm not aware of it being adopted or not. I think the things I've seen, I think NGC came out with something, and I believe I don't know for sure. We don't sticker them, but I think a 9.5 is a 65, a 9.6 is a 66. It's really the same thing. It really doesn't change anything in my opinion. It might make it more marketable and easier to relate to, but I could promise you the reason for the so-called, first of all, I was going to say, I'm not going to say the demise of our hobby because their hobby is stronger than ever, but I believe it's not rocket science. The 1 to 70 scale, when I explain it to people, they understand it in 3 seconds, and it's probably even a Jeopardy question. I don't think it's that big of a deal, really. Yeah.
So on comes third-party grading. Maybe in hindsight, 86 felt like an inevitable turning point in the hobby, with this farming. But at the time, how much resistance was there from established dealers who had built their careers on being the expert and saying, I think this is a 65 or a 62 or whatever it may be? And, was it hard when you first started doing it, or was it more of finally somebody came up a way to standardize this for everyone?
I don't know. I mean, I think there was probably a lot of bickering going on but I remember sitting down with David Hall like in month 1 of PCGS, and I said, David, this is a runaway train. You could just feel the momentum. I mean, of course, the old timers would complain, or some of them. When I say old timer, back then it was a guy who was 36, so because I was like PCGS. I was 20. What was I? 1886. I was 27. So the old timers, the guys in their middle age guys, they were guys our age. Forget about it, right? But we disregarded them. It wasn't something that we really cared about. We just went forward.
Obviously, it worked because I think there's 110 million coins that have been stickered over the
Yeah, yeah,
last 40 years or something like that.
yeah,
So it's been a great success.
yeah.
Was there a single point or a most important thing that standardized grading did for collectors? Because I know as a young kid, and my dad and grandfather were collectors, and Coin World was around, and I was starting to do it. It made it easier for me knowing that maybe I don't have as good eye as somebody else, but if it was a 65 or a 63, you kind of went, okay, you accepted that.
I think it got them much closer to where they should have been. So if a collector was at a show and he was considering back in the old days 10 or 15 coins, and some of those could have been terrible deals. Now he's looking at 3 coins, and it's I think it narrowed it down for them, and then they could pick the one that they like. And not all MS65s were alike, and I know some collectors that will that especially the Morgan dollar buyers that only buy a coin that has no toning. But then they tell me they want to buy a coin with no toning that's never been dipped, and I tell them, well, that's probably impossible. I said, if a coin's dipped properly and stored properly and rinsed and dried properly, you're not going to know it was dipped, right? I mean, it was dipped once, especially. So, and then there were other dealers, other collectors that just want to buy tone coins. So everyone has a preference. I've again, I have found that like type collectors. If you talk to the guys, I think in the Bust Half Nut Club and the John Reich Society for Bust Coins, also, or the Liberty Seated Collector guys, they want their coins. They're circulating coins. They want them gray. They want them darker. They don't want them bright. They don't want them that way. So that's their taste, and they're willing to pay double for them. So. Um, I think it narrows it down to where you can make a choice, right? Just like if you're looking for homes, you want a certain neighborhood, you have it narrowed down to a certain neighborhood, a certain price range, and then you pick what you want. So yeah, I think it makes it easier, but it's not perfect. It's not perfect, right?
Oh, I would agree with you. I think the market would agree with that point. So grading services, introduced this concept of market grading where coins were graded relative to what the market expected for an issue rather than a quote unquote technical standard, if you will. And that's evolved over time. But was that a practical necessity, do you think, or was that a compromise? What was your sense of that philosophy?
Well, it's an old story, but when you say strictly technical grading, it's an old story because I still have nightmares about it. But in the early days of NGC, a 1928 peace dollar was submitted, and it was perfect, right? Fully struck, as they all come. But the coin was the brown and green. So looked like some of those Hawaiian commemoratives or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
It was kind of model looking, but it was perfect, right? And we graded a 65, and it went to a show, and the market puked it out. I mean, no one wanted. We got complaints, and we kind of learned. I said, something. Technically, the coin's all there, but the market says no. The market wants a prettier coin. The market would prefer a 1928 peace dollar that's white or near white, that has flashy, has a few marks on it. So is that technical? When people say technical, I'm thinking you're thinking of abrasions, hairlines, and bag marks, but really, we've always equated eye appeal as part of the grade. Now, this makes, if you're from an engineering background, you're going to think that we're wrong. If you're from an artistic background, you're going to think it's right. Is it an art or is it a science? I still say it's an art. To this day, we will not sticker a coin to this day or a grade in Virginia Beach this day if we think the market's going to reject it, even though it might be a 65. We're like, something, no one's going to want this as a 60. They're going to want something prettier. So I've always argued that I don't really know how to grade coins. I think I'm overrated as a grader, but I know what coins are worth. And if I see a 1928 peace dollar and it's worth $5,000, it's going to get a sticker, right? And 65, right? And If it's worth 1,200, even though it might be technically 65, it's not going to get a sticker because out of the holder, it's worth 1,200. I have to look at them as how they would trade from how experts would buy them out of the holder.
Yeah, makes sense. So, what was one of the things that was an interesting that we hear a lot from our readers are, the slabbing process, obviously physically separated the coin from direct handling and being able to touch it and all that kind of stuff. I said, so did the psychology of collecting change when that happened because you've got this plastic holder, or did people just kind of got used to it at some point in time and got away from the tactical nature of it?
I mean, I used to enjoy as a kid, as a collector, handling my coins. I used to enjoy it. I lived in New Jersey. It was kind of humid, kind of hot. I remember to this day another nightmare I had, but I bought an 1804 half cent from Ed Hips. It was full red, right? Literally full red gem. And I would take it out. I would look at it. I would take it out. I guess maybe over the years from handling it, even though I didn't breathe on it, maybe just having it exposed over the years, it was still a gem, but it just got darker and darker and darker. And quite frankly, if it was in an inert holder, I would have been much better off. So I think the coins are protected in the holders. The holders are inert. So, but it does take away the fun. If you talk to the Europeans, they buy their crowns, they buy their U.S. silver commemoratives, they take them out, they play with them, they look at them, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not doing it to a gem uncirculated coin, right? If you take an XF bust half that's lightly cleaned, you're not really going to hurt it by putting your fingers on it or tossing it. It's not a problem. But if you buy a superb coin, you'd rather have it protected.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I can see pros and cons of both.
Yeah.
So slabbing is happening now, and grading and holders is happening, and third party grading, I think it's fair to say that it's widely credited with expanding the rare coin market dramatically through the 90s and 2000s, because all of a sudden, the new person to the market or the less educated person to the market felt like they could buy at a fair price or could sell at a fair price because there was an accepted standard by a third party professional, right? Kind of protected them a little bit. I said, do you think that growth would have happened anyway, or was slabbing coins basically the catalyst that took off the market, or did the economy, or what do you think was the boom behind all that?
I mean, I'm not so sure. I know the baseball card market's taken off dramatically. I think grading has certainly helped there. The stamp market has had a slow, long, miserable death since I started collecting coins, and they certify them, so that didn't do anything for them. We could say that that's why the hobby's doing well, but it's really just it's a guess. I don't really know what would have happened if there wasn't third party. I mean, I would imagine, and again, the whole reason for PCGS was originally it started with 32 people as market makers, and the deal was okay, we're going to grade these coins, and the problem was back then too. I had this problem. David Hall had the problem, and that's why Hugh Sconders would mention to him. The problem is, yeah, I'll buy coins from you or David Hall or Bruce Amspecher, but what if something happens to them? What if they hit by a truck? What do I do with my coins? And back in those days, it was notorious for if you bought a great coin from someone and you showed it to 90% of the dealers, they would badmouth it and try to buy it cheaply, right? They try to buy it at a lower grade. That's just how it was, right? But basically, if 32 of us stuck together and agreed we're going to support this market, that's how it all started. And that 32 then blew up, right? Um, that's the reason why. So we had at least 32 people were on board with agreeing with the grade and willing to make a market.
Yeah. Well, it transformed the hobby, no question
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So the standardizing of the grades, if you will, made it easier for people to buy coins, sight unseen, right? So whether that was over the phone or now online,
Right, right.
and did that fundamentally change the economics of the dealer business when that happened? Did that help? Did that hurt? What do you think the impact was on the hobby and the collector?
I think what had happened was it did change it. So there was more confidence. There were more buyers. There was more volume. But it was also, but in terms of like say barrier of entry, when I was a kid, or even a young adult, barrier of entry was very high, not because of money or lack of money, it was lack of knowledge, because not that many people possess knowledge. So now the grading services come out, and fundamentally, it levels the playing field. You could, someone could put together $50 million of private equity fund and build a website and buy up coins, not knowing anything about coins almost, and claim they're one of the world's largest retailers, not having any experience or knowledge. Basically, off the backs of the grading services, they can now buy and sell coins without having knowledge. So it's open. So in terms of barrier of entry, it's much more competitive. So yeah, so volumes are higher, but profit margins are tiny.
And
So that's where, or smaller.
And is that still happening right now? I mean, obviously the silver and gold prices have kind of run crazy here over the past 12
No,
months.
I think so. I think because of the information out there on the internet, so it's much tougher to make a margin. I just bought a 1794 large cent. It auctioned for 89,000 last month or two, and I paid 90,000 for it. I think I have a buyer for 92,000, and I'll have to wait 30 days to get paid. So you're talking about
Yeah.
that's a 3% margin. Back in the old days, you bought a coin for 90,000, you wouldn't even think of selling it for less than 100, right?
Yeah.
Now you're selling for 92, and now everyone knows what you paid. They go online, they check it, they can ask their AI, whoever. Everyone has AI in their smartphone, and they put the serial number in and find out all the information. So it's much more transparent. So therefore, more confidence, more volume, lower profit margins. And as you know today, Rick, you can call Maryland tomorrow. You could put in a $10 million order, not tomorrow, but Monday, and you could buy SpaceX at the market and spend $10 million on Monday on one stock, zero commission.
Yeah.
So think about that. So is that where we're headed? Maybe,
Yeah. Well, let's hope not. But yeah, you can see
Yeah.
technology having an impact on all
Right.
industries, and
Sure.
the coin industry is certainly not going to be excluded from that.
Mhm.
So let's talk for a moment about registry sets. I mean, what a great idea, right? Because it basically introduced competitive grading or excuse me, competitive collecting by grade. And that drove some big premiums, right? And that drove people wanting to have a finer collection than their friends or
Right.
somebody else. And do you think that was ultimately healthy for the hobby, or do you think it distorted, or do you think it distorted the market now that we can look back?
I would think, and I've argued this many times. I mean, competition is good; it drives up prices, but it has, in some ways, distorted the market. And it sounds absurd, but I think the other day someone mentioned a coin to me. I think it was a 1955 D quarter, so Denver Mint, a coin that when I had my coin shop, I would give it away as a free sample. But I think the highest graded coin just sold for around $60,000. So to me, it's quite possible. I don't have my data in front of me. It's quite possible that the 1955 D quarter is worth more than the finest 1855 quarter. That's absurd to me. The finest 1962 quarter probably worth more than the finest 1862 quarter. So in that sense, it's somewhat just. It's really to me, it's like to me, it's a nightmare. It's a numismatic nightmare. But I would never advise someone to pay $40,000 for a common date wash and quarter at high grade when you could buy a 66 almost as nice for 1% of the price or less. So that's my opinion. I've been wrong about that, but I believe in buying good value. I don't believe in chasing modern coins, so-called condition rarities, just for the highest grade registry. Because the populations, as we've seen over the years, may increase, probably will increase. So to me, I would say stick with rarity. And and again, even as a kid, I always bought the finest possible. But in this market, it's in most cases I would no longer buy the finest, recommend the finest, because the finest is at such an extravagant price. I'd rather buy something that's awfully nice for 10 cents on the dollar than buying the finest.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
You know,
So how did grading services change the way auction houses operate? I mean, did they gain power? Did they lose power? Was there a new reality because of the impact of the auction houses and how significant they are today?
I think, well, I'm sure, listen, the auction houses have become huge and they've become, as a result of grading. I think they've grown with the hobby. I mean, the auction houses still possess, expert catalogers who know the history about the coin, know more than we do, so they do a good job in most cases. I don't think it's really, I don't know if it's made their job easier or harder, but I think as opposed to, you know, someone sends in a collection of uncertified coins back in the old days, they had to do the grading. So they might call them choice BU or gem BU, but they weren't really bound to that because there was no third party looking over their shoulder. Now they can just say XYZ service graded MS65, and they're sort of off the hook, right? And if a client wants to buy a coin at auction for a 1955 decoder for $60,000, they're not at any risk because the client did it with his eyes wide open. So I think, again, the auction companies today, I think their primary concern is keeping up with technology and making their platforms friendly for collectors. Back in the old days, you would you had to drive to Stacks or wherever you were to look at their auction lots, go to the auction or have someone represent you. Now they have it online. It's a platform. It's you just click on, you bid on it. They show you the picture. It's the auction technology has come a long way.
No, it's a highly efficient tool.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and to the detriment of maybe attending coin shows and other things, but it certainly has broadened its appeal to a
Well,
greater group of people.
well, it definitely has hurt coin shows, and the biggest detriment to coin shows to me was the advent of Federal Express and then Express Mail because, back in in the '80s, if you said, "Hey John, I want to see that Lafayette dollar," if I had to send it to your registered mail, it might take 10 days to get to Chicago, and if you didn't want it, 10 days to get back. Now I would just say, "I'll see you at the show." So that's why the shows are so important because we would never ship a coin those days. But now when it became overnight mail, I can call a coin dealer in California on my way home from work today at 6 o'clock and say, "Send me that Lafayette dollar," and it's on my desk tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
And so that's really changed things too.
that's a nice feature. So
Yeah.
so let's talk about maybe some of the unintended consequences for a moment. So now you've got coins and holders, you've got a grade on them. Everybody, right or wrong, everybody looks at the numbers 65, 66, 63, and kind of says it is what it is, right? And I think you've said before in some of our previous conversations that, there's more to it than the grade. And sometimes, you got to take into account the authority of what it deserves and things of that nature. So how difficult has that made? It sounds like some of your customers, and I know the other graders are saying the same thing, where people are getting upset with grades, or they're saying, hey, if it doesn't come in a certain grade, don't even put it in a slab, just send it back to me. And so is this making grading harder?
I don't know about big. I think I always tell people the market speaks. So I'm just to focus on the 1891 O silver dollar. You can look online in MS65, and you're going to see in MS65. You're probably going to see prices anywhere from the 2000s to the 7000s for 65. So really that's a huge range, right? And so, but it just goes to show you when they show you the picture at an auction, if the coin's not well struck, it's not going to bring the 7,000. The $7,000 one's the well struck one. The really nice the coin with maybe MS65 surfaces that's weakly struck brings 2,000. So the key is not to pay 7,000 for the $2,000. That's why CAC was incepted, was to separate the not so nice coin from the more desirable. And now again, I'm mentioning this is not a typical coin. I'm mentioning a coin this is like an extreme example of a price, right? A 91cc dollar will tighten that up. It might be 3,500 and 4,500, right? So, but here's an extreme example of a coin, and the market's taught us that there's a big spread there, and you better do your homework or talk to your trusted dealer. it's still nice to have a trusted expert that you deal with.
Yeah, you got to have somebody there that's advocating for you,
Right.
right, and helping you either affirm or challenge what you might be thinking is always a valuable service. And the PNG, and there's a lot of good dealers out there that'll help people do that. So gradeflation, right? Always a criticism of third party grading. In your view, is it rampant? What causes it? Is it market pressure? Is it personnel? Is it graders changing out? I mean,
Well,
is it getting better or worse? I mean, is it still big a topic, if you will, or dying down?
I think it is always will be a topic, but I'll be clear. So I was there, and I got to tell you, I mean, I remember before the grading service, I had two 1835 half times. They were absolutely amazing. I mean, they were. I'm going to tell you that. I mean, 67 plus on a bad day, 68 maybe, right? Actually, no, I did 1834 to 1835. The 34 was white. The 35 was semi-proof like in green, right? And I remember when PCGS first started, I submitted them, and I think they graded them 65 and 66, right? So I think at the time, everybody was scared. We were like, it felt like 65 was the highest number, right? So it was interesting. And even like a year and a half later, and I always told you like I grade coins based on the market. I remember in Parsippany at NGC early on, it must have been probably 1989. I remember Scott Travers called me and told me he just bought a proof barber quarter in '68 for $40,000. Now, $40,000 for a proof barber quarter that was probably $5,000 before the services started. It was a mind-boggling number. So, as a grader, you hear these things of what's going on. Silver dollars, 1880s and 65 are $1,000. As a grader, you tend to say, "Oh, these are $1,000." So basically, you pick up a coin. This is not a 65. Why? I wouldn't pay $1,000 for this. So basically, if you're going to pay $1,000 for ADS dollars in those days, or $40,000 for a Washington quarter, a proof barber quarter, it had to dock you off your chair, right? So I believe we inherited this really popular idea. Wall Street was in coins. This guy named Mirage from Iran was buying tons of coins. I think it was a Kidder Peabody fund. Shearson came in, and coins that skyrocketed. The float or the amount of coins out there was very, very small because the service had just started. The standards were tight and the prices skyrocketed. And as the prices went higher and higher, instinctively, as a grader, I can speak for myself, we got stricter because we were scared. I'm not grading this 68. This is not 40,000. So then, I mean, things have normalized. The barber quarter that was 40,000 is now 8 to 10,000, and I haven't seen that standard on those change in over a decade. It seems fine to me. It seems fine. I mean, even the coins that we reject and don't sticker in a barber quarter and proof 68, we might call it a low end 68 or a nice 67. We don't think we don't think they're way offline, right? So I think it's you're always going to hear stories about it, but you're hearing isolated stories.
Yeah, it seems. I would hope so too. So, now with modern coins and the volume in which the government was cranking them out, if you will, you kind of got a proliferation of 70s, right, for the modern stuff. And a lot of folks say, hey, unless it's a 69 or a 70, why even put it in a holder? What has that done to the integrity of the whole numeric system, if you will,
Yeah,
when people are, if it's not perfect, I don't want it. If it's a modern
right,
coin, it's like I
right,
hear people saying all the time, if it's not 69 or 70, I won't even put it in a
right.
holder. And I'm not sure that's the right strategy, but that's what's happening.
Well, so the modern grading to me is more of a marketing grade. So like I know at CACG, if you go to our website, look at our grading criteria on modern coins, we 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 do not tell you a modern coin is perfect. We tell you it's nearly perfect, can have slight imperfections, on and on and on. I think PCGS and NGC say it's perfect under 5 power magnification. I haven't seen enough modern coins to know if that's true. But what I could tell you is that 1898 Barber quarter, there's one in the stacks auction. uh, next week and proof 68 plus, I think. And it's graded 68 plus. If that were a modern coin, if that was a 2026 quarter, it would be a 70. So the modern grades are higher as a matter of a definition. That's how they market them. We're sort of stuck with that. But and I got to tell you, and again, when we say modern coins, I'm thinking because I enjoy giving out these coins as gifts to nieces and nephews and graduation gifts and bar mitzvahs but like some of these coins like these proof peace dollars and the coins that we signed for your show, those are cool looking coins and they make nice gifts. They weigh about an ounce of silver. They're $100, whatever. It's harmless. They're fine, but you have to remember too. So when I was a kid collecting coins, when I worked at a coin shop, let's say in 1974, a 40-year-old coin was 1934. A 1934 Walker, a 1934 peace dollar, that was not considered modern. It was considered a legitimate coin. A 40-year-old coin today, to these teenagers, it's a 1986 Silver Eagle. To them, it's an old coin. It's 40 years old. People come in, they send 1966 quarters in, and whatever, they're 70 years old. They think 60 years old, they think that these are old coins, and to us, it's pocket change, right? So it's all a matter of what you're used to. I still get to the point where I get to like Walkers were good coins when I was a kid. Franklin's maybe once in a while, but as soon as you started with Kennedy's, I wasn't interested. But a 1964 Kennedy half today is 60 over 60 years old. Um, but another funny thing happened too. So I thought all Silver Eagles were common in MS-70. I decided I was going to build some sets as gifts, right? Complete sets. And then I realized, just like I was a kid looking for the $91 like for CAC in Virginia Beach, I'm not sure about NGC and PCGS's populations, but a 1994 Silver Eagle in Virginia Beach and MS-70, there's three of them. They made three coins. It's on our website as retail 6250, very similar price to 91.0. What am I know? Who am I to say? I mean, I thought I knew something about antiques. I was a kid. My mom had Hummels, and they were $50 a piece in the 1970s, and they were great. And when I was older, I was going to buy. And when I started making money in the 80s, I started buying Hummels for $50 or $60 a piece, and now they're worth $2 a piece. So what do I know? I mean, markets change, tastes change, things change. I mean, I've been dead wrong about Pokemon cards. I mean, they've probably been the hottest investment. It's those are hotter than these AI stocks, right? But I just shake my head.
Yeah,
So
I do too.
as far as like what's right and what's wrong, I don't think it's up to us. I think the market does what the market does,
Okay.
And meanwhile, I still can't sell an 1862 quarter for more than the finest 1962. To me, it's wrong, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what to tell you, Rick.
Well, it's a fair point. So we hear from collectors, our readership that, they would argue that, the slabbing of coins has, made the hobby a little bit more transactional and less personal, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
they're sad about that. And,
I know.
they become financial instruments rather than historical artifacts, if you will. And do
Yeah.
you buy into that? You think that's a fair critique, or, does that concern you on the
I
based
think
on your last order, a coin or your last comment, a coin that's 100 years old, sells for less than a coin that's 40 years old.
I just think it means we're over the hill, Rick. I remember to this day, um, it was special when I was a kid going into New York, and my grandmother would buy clothes for us, nice clothing, right? And my grandfather was a gold bull. He actually got me started with collecting coins, gave me barber quarters, but my grandmother got me this pair of pants, and they were bell bottoms, right? And according to my grandfather, like that was the end of our generation. Like we were wearing bell bottoms, and it was all over. So I don't I don't know what to. I'm just trying to relate to it. I think what really matters, if I want to buy certain stocks now, like Roblox, I don't do my research. I ask my kids. I don't. As far as the modern trends, I don't know what to tell you. Listen. I still have an AOL email address, so that shows you where I'm coming from. And people laugh at me all the time when I give my email address. I have to say it with with a joke because I don't know how to change it. I don't feel like changing it, and too bad. Get used to it.
I know a lot of people that still have their AOL account.
Yeah,
So yeah, no,
yeah,
you're not
yeah.
alone.
I
You're not
still pay them $19 a month, and I get great service because they only have like 3 customers.
Well, I must know all three of them because
Yeah,
I have more than a few AOL email addresses
yeah,
in my contact list.
yeah.
So grading services, they create, there's been this cracking open coins, right, and resubmitting them in hopes of getting a higher grade, and what does that tell us? I mean, is that wishful thinking, or so many coins were graded for so long? I remember hearing the grading companies are doing thousands or tens of thousands of coin a day in some cases. And so, did it test the limits of the system, or did economics take over? I mean, what do you think was
I don't know.
incentive there?
Unfortunately, Rick, I think it's the gamification. Um, there's a new app out there called Whatnot. It's people are buying coins on there, and I gotta tell you, I have issues with it. It's not just coins, and I mean I know some collectors are they're upset about it, but I gotta tell you something. The majority of collectors I talk to, they want to do the same thing. They want to get their coins upgraded. It's a strange thing. It's we have this cal sheet now. We have all this online sports, but we have all this crazy thing. Everyone now, basically, probably 50 or 100 million Americans have a casino on their smartphone. Well, they're betting on the game tonight. They're betting on this. They're betting on that. It's just to me the gamification. It's to me it's white noise. It doesn't really matter to me. I think they're wasting their money. I always tell people don't waste your money on grading fees and fee grading a coin. Spend that money on coins, right?
Yeah, good advice, probably, right? Yeah.
Excuse me.
And what do you think of this ABC quality spectrum? Where different coins in the same grade now are getting, if you will, subgrades to a certain extent,
Well,
and
I mean, we always at CAC we always talked about ABC just as basically we sticker the A coin, the B coin, right? And this was something as a teenager I'd seen on John Dan rather would have it on his flip. He would grade them ABC, and it's just sort of if I'm describing a coin to someone on the phone that they when I talk about it, I say, well, what do you think? I said, well, it's a B minus coin, and they understand. That means, well, yeah, we stickered it. It could have been nicer. Again, at every standard, you have to have the lowest grade. I mean, tonight there's going to be 10 amazing athletes on the floor in Madison Square Garden playing basketball tonight, and the worst one is pretty darn good, right? So even though he's the worst player, he's probably making $18 million, and he was the best player in his state, in high school or in college. So you have to draw the line somewhere, right? So we draw the line at B minus,
that's fair. I think that's reasonable.
but that's just internal lingo.
Yeah,
It's not formalized on the holder. It's just if I'm describing a coin to you,
yeah.
or I might say, "Hey, Rick, the coin's it's a 66C. It's just too dark, so we grade it a 65." And you would understand that as a coin.
Yeah. So that brings up a good point. So you talk about the strike, the quality of the strike, the luster, the eye appeal. They can vary. They can vary among coins with the same
Sure,
grade, right? And so,
absolutely.
in hindsight, should those have factored into the? If we could go back in time, should we have tried to factor that into the grading scale, or
I guess on the $91 you could have a 65 A, B, and C, and one would be 7,000, and one would be 4,500, and one would be 2,000. I guess you could do that, but now you're splitting up the Sheldon scale. The 10 points from 60 to 70. Now you're chopping into 30 pieces. You're taking you're just threading. You're just I don't know. I think too much slicing and dicing going on. I think you grade at 65. Let the market determine what it sells for. I
yeah,
mean, I like coins that some people don't like, and vice versa. Right? So there's really no right or wrong, Rick. It's really a matter of personal taste. It's a matter of who taught me, how I was brought up. I mean, I learned Mercury dimes from Ed Hips. Joe Connor learned Mercury dimes from Joe Connor. There was a night. There was a there was a Berkeley and I met there in the 1930s in full bands grade of 68. That was glorious. And Joe had a problem with it. Why, Joe? The bands are all marked up. And I looked, I said, that's minuscule. That's nothing. And he would say, Larry Whitlow would never buy that coin. So it's ingrained in his head. And I'm thinking, well, Ed Hipps would have bought it. So, so basically, as you can see, it's an art.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of the beauty of the hobby, right? I mean, it is an art form inside some boundaries, if you will.
Right.
So you've graded roughly 1 million coins or so, which is, wow, that's a big number. And
I don't even know how many. I'm sure it's more than that, but I don't know how many. But
yeah, you didn't count them, right?
That's probably old news on my 20-year-old Wikipedia page or something.
Yeah, but does grading become? I mean, you probably with that amount, you probably can do it very quickly, right? So I would assume it becomes mechanical at some point in time, or I know in past conversations you've said that you share with other peers of yours in terms of, hey, I think this is a 68 or 69. What do you think? But is it hard to do it, or can you look at a coin and in 5 seconds go, this is 65, or this is 63, or this is?
When I'm in Virginia Beach, I have Ron Javusky there and John Butler. We'll pass around coins, and we don't always agree, but we usually do agree on most coins. Grading a coin in Virginia Beach is different because you're basically, let's say a $91 comes in. Okay, it's a 65. It's weakly struck. We call it a 4+, right? So, but we discuss it, and someone might say, "Well, they would grade this a 5." And I said, "Well, we don't. Our 65s must be well struck." We discuss it. We show it to Chris Simpson to make sure it's not one of those crazy varieties, right? And then it moves on. We call it a 4+. Here, if it comes into a 65 holder, I'm sitting here by myself in my dark room. Bill Wetzler's here. I'll show it to him if I have a question, or Steve Blum, but in most cases, I look at it and right away I see their opinion, and right away it's yes or no. So in New Jersey, it's yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. I'm not really. Some people, I'll get a call from Greg Reynolds, who could write 1,000-page article about one coin, and he'll say, "What did you grade that coin?" I said, "I don't remember. I just remember I put a red dot on it, and I went. I don't have time to really analyze what I grade a coin. If I don't like it, it gets a red sticker. It doesn't get stickered. So I don't keep notes on, it was a 65. Would I call it a 4? Would I call it a 3+? Would I call it 4+? It's irrelevant to us. We just don't sticker it.
So you think?
But I would say, but your answer question, yes. Usually the decision comes very quickly. Now, if it's a 1797 silver dollar that has full luster with a weak strike, it's a little bit more complicated. It has literally has VF detail, but it's fully lustrous. That becomes more of a, that could be a 10-minute conversation, right? That's different. But an 1897 Morgan dollar, it's a very quick decision.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because there's this interesting combination of science, mechanical, art,
Right.
and then there's something in the middle here, right, that kind of resists all those things. As you said, it's in the eye of the beholder,
right?
More so than anybody else. And I guess it's just expertise and experience that helps you decipher what it is you want.
Right.
And it's interesting for us because we get the proliferation of wealth that's been created over the last 20 years, has folks looking for alternative assets and investments, and you and David Hall and others have said, look, buy beautiful coins, buy coins that you like, do it for the fun, don't do it for the financial gain. And that's sage advice, but a lot of people go, well, I'll fall in love with a beautiful coin that I also could make money on. So it's an interesting time for folks to go to shows or get educated and try and make an investment. We've had several readers over the years that have reached up and said, "Hey, I made a mistake. I bought all these coins, and now I made a mistake." And so it really is, do what's appealing to you, I guess, right? Yeah. So let's switch a little bit here. The introduction of imaging and technology, AI grading, and that phenomenon. I remember in the 90s, Coin World hired a company out of Columbus called Battelle. And the theory was, and we spent a bunch of money developing technology that says, all right, we're going to take the human factor out of grading, right? We're going to use computers and technology and software to do it rather than the individual. And now that version is AI assisted grading tools, right? High resolution photography, all that stuff. I mean, what do you think of those tools, and what are they still not going to capture? Because technology is getting good, but it's not perfect, right?
So we're in discussions with several firms about AI. Like I tell you, the issue with AI, first of all, when it comes to photographs, it happens to me twice a day. Someone sending me a coin, a picture of a coin. How could you sticker this? How could you have not sticker this? I see a picture. Like, I can't tell. I can't. I mean, coins are three-dimensional. I have to look at them in proper lighting. So I think in order for AI to really grade a coin, it couldn't be from a photograph. I mean, you could tell a 1796 quarter, whether it's fine or VF or XF from a photograph, but 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 in order to see if it's been lightly cleaned or burnished, you have to rotate it in the light. So you would need to really rotate the coin, have all sorts of angles with all sorts of lenses to do it correctly. It's not impossible, I believe. Sealed monster boxes from the mint coming in 2 years from now, will AI be grading them? Probably, right? Because we know what they are, we know where they've been. Um, it's pretty easy for us when we get a group of the GSA silver dollars in the grade, because they've been sealed net holders since, well, I guess in the 60s, maybe, actually the 70s, and we know that they were dipped. They didn't thumb them, they didn't put wax on them, they didn't artificially tone them. So it makes it easy for something like that. So it's not impossible for coins like that, but for most coins, I mean, I would love to have AI replace what I do. I would love to just go fishing tomorrow, but I can't, So it'd be fine with me, and I'm willing to work with developers to see if it can be done.
It'd be interesting. Yeah.
I have an open mind. I hope it happens.
Yeah. Well, we're all, as we age, it's interesting seeing where technology is going, and
Yeah,
this AI boom right now, if you will. I call it the Internet 2.0, right, from the 90s in terms of the
sure.
impact it had, and it feels like that evolution or that boom for the next 5 or 10 years could be similar. So
Right.
hopefully it's for good. So let's talk about a little bit about the market today. So if you were explaining to a better than average, let's call it a sophisticated newcomer, someone with real money, a genuine love of history, um, what they need to do or what they need to understand about grading services before their first significant coin and making a good choice, what would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them to first do some reading. Now, if they want to go on the internet, fine. If they want print reading, I would say obviously subscription to Coin World, subscription to the Gray Sheet. Try to get a hold of Maurice Rosen's older newsletters. He's no longer writing them. Get a red book, right? I mean, these are important things. And Scott Travers has a book. I think it's a collector's. I think it's a survival manual. I forget which edition, but just the basics.
Yeah, very well.
Spend a few hours there, and you're gonna know most than 90% of the buyers. You start there. Go to a coin show. Go to a coin shop and just talk to people. As opposed to don't go in there with your Brioni suit on, right? Just go in there as a regular guy and talk to people. Listen to the scuttlebutt. You walk in there, like you're a founder of Google. They're gonna tell you a different story, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's many of understated person at a coin show, not trying to
Right,
impress
right,
people,
right.
right? So 40 years on, what do you think the most important thing the grading industry still hasn't gotten right? I mean, is it the problems of then remain generally unresolved today, or do you think we're really close to having this all kind of figured out?
I mean, I know. Listen, I think the market's sorted out. I think I didn't read all the questions you had today, but I know one of them was experts disagree or differ on grades. But I can tell you one thing: if you were to bring to me a $500,000 coin collection that was ungraded from chain cents up to a 1931 Saint or 1932 Saint, the whole gamut in the Red Book. If you just send me a collection of diversified coins and grades and everything else, I could, if you show them to 10 or 15 experts, forget the grading, okay? And you say you have to bid on this, right? You're gonna get pretty much within 5 or 10%. They're all gonna be hovering around the same area. So they all agree on what the coins are worth. If you forget the grades, right? What's the coin worth? I mean, like I said, a $91.00, do your homework. If it goes for 22.50 and the other one just brought 7,000, try to figure it out why it is. Are you a buyer for the 22.50 coin or the $7,000 coin? There's no right or wrong. There's no right. Some people want to buy the high end coin. Some people don't. Not everyone can afford the best coin, right? So they have to settle. So it's really a matter. I mean, listen, Walmart exists for a reason, right? So if you're going to your daughter's wedding and and you can't afford a Brooks Brothers tuxedo for $2,000, you go to Men's Warehouse and you get one for $200, right? It's not saying that as long as they're not charging you $2,000, it's okay. Right?
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer there. We get questions all the time of, hey, I got $1,000 to buy, I got $1,000 to invest in coins. What should I buy? Or 10,000 or even $1 million.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, which is, well, what's your goal? And, let's help you find a dealer or an auction company out there that maybe can assist you.
Right.
It's the same thing, but everybody wants to do it for the love of it.
Sure.
So it's kind of fun. All right. So last question. And I do appreciate your time. So the hobby is really at a crossroads right now in many areas, and one of them is competing for the attention of what I'll call younger generation or the next generation of folks who have grown up in the digital, instantly verifiable world of everything, right? And does the current grading and certification system serve that audience well, or do you think, does it need a fundamental rethinking over the next 40 years? I mean, if you were to kind of say, all right, here's what Coin World should do, here's what auction companies should do, here's what coin show folks should do. I mean, what do you think the challenges are, and what solutions should we be exploring to keep a hobby that we all love vibrant, into the next generation?
Right. So you talk about the younger generation. I got to tell you, and I've just started catching on this in the last 6 months, but it used to be they would go online and they would read about coins. Right. You go to Google, you read articles. There's sponsored. There's guys that are sponsored, so you might see their ads first. But now it's really. I think they're going to go to AI. So that's what they're going to do. They're not going to waste the time. Right? They're going to go and they're going to ask AI, and they're going to make it very simple for them, and they're going to make something very complex and intricate very simple. So it's going to be easier for them. But easier to make mistakes too, because they're just going to go to AI and there's just basic answers.
Yeah. Well,
But that's where they're going. That's where they're going for their information, and that's what they're using to do their homework, and that's what they're using to do their resume, and that's what companies are doing to read their resume. That's what the AI is going to take over.
Yeah, no, it really is, and I'm hopeful that the I have 3 daughters in their 30s, right? And so they're having fun now talking about going offline again because their generation's both been so consumed with what's happening. And so,
Right.
I'm hopeful that, wakeboarding or surfing or skiing or coin collecting or stamp collecting, becomes things people are going to do and embrace more so than they have maybe in the last 10 or 15 years, because it's a chance to get away from all that constant information and just kind of relax and do something that's fun.
Sure.
So we'll see, but fingers crossed for all of us, right? This is our, my grandfather started this in 65, right? So we're in our 66th year, and
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And as a publishing company, this is our 150th anniversary. We started in the newspaper business in the 1876, and so it's really the publishing industry, the media space has really been duressed, but candidly, it needs to evolve. I mean, we're recording this session, right? And we'll do videos, we'll post online, we'll do educational outreach, we'll be on YouTube, we'll be on Instagram with snippets here, and you got to meet people where the audience wants to meet you,
Sure.
and the hobby will have to do the same, right? I mean, it's the evolution of all industries.
When do you anticipate the last published coin will coming out in terms of the paper edition? You have a target date for that?
We do not. It's amazing how we're trying to. There's a saying I use internally with us, which is a baseball. I'm a baseball fan, so we're trying to steal second base with our foot still on first. And what I mean by that is the loyal following of our readership has always been print based. That being said, we know the next generation are those that are 45 or younger. Probably are never going to subscribe to a print catalog or a print magazine, right? They're going to want to watch videos, they're going to want to read online, they want instant access. So, we have to continue to serve our audience that still wants print. And there's a lot of them, there's tens of thousands of them that do. But we have hundreds of thousands of folks that will go to coinworld.com because, they want to click it on their phone or their wherever, and they're not going to go to their mailbox to get a magazine and read all 120 pages, right? So right now we're still printing, we're still doing the weekly and the monthly, we're still doing the special issue publications on a variety of topics, which is very popular for us. But our international and our digital audience continues to grow, so we're creating more content to serve up that audience as well. So you got to serve two masters, so to speak, in media.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed, right? But it's a challenging time for a lot of industries right now, and the media space is one of them, no question.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, John, this has been a remarkable conversation. Again, thank you for doing that. And the one that has truly served and lived in the history inside and out. You're giving us a perspective that not many others could. So, you've helped build the systems that gave millions of collectors confidence and spent a lot of money to participate in this wonderful hobby. You've identified the limits before most people were willing to admit they even existed. And so, you've spent 4 decades or more here pushing us towards something better. And so, on behalf of me and on behalf of Coin World and our readers and listeners, I want to thank you for taking the time to visit with us today. And, for our audience out there, this interview is going to be part of Coin World's coverage, reflecting not only on coins, but also telling stories.
Yeah.
And for those people who you and David Hall and many others that are dedicated their lives to preserving and sharing it with us. So, thank you for doing that. And we really appreciate you being a part of this series on Coin World Television.
Well, thanks, Rick. But I really got to tell you, like you mentioned 40 years, but I really, I'm not doing a victory dance. I still feel like it's not good enough. We're not good enough. We got to do better. I'd never rest on my laurels. We have a ways to go. So I'm not 100% satisfied with what I've done, my company's done, but I want to get it better every day. It's never going to be perfect, but I do strive to make it as perfect as possible.
Well, good. And on behalf of our readers and our audiences, everybody, that when John Albanese's names come up, people stop and pay attention. It's the old E.F. This dates us. It's the old E.F. Hutton thing, right?
Yeah.
What does John think? And so, job well done in terms of what you've been doing and what you've done and what you're going to be doing in the futures. Because I know you love this hobby. So thanks for spending time with us.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.